going on, guys? Welcome into today's show. I've got Mr. Richard Wilson, the founder and CEO of FamilyOffices.com, billionaires.com. He puts on family office events for high net worth individuals, family offices, people raising capital, and has just really tapped into an amazingly affluent, wise, and wealthy network. And the insights that he shared today, if you're somebody that wants to raise capital for anything, real estate, businesses, you name it, this is going to be a really fruitful episode for you. We had some great conversations around how to find these groups, these individuals, how to present deals to them, how to structure these deals, the make or breaks, how to build these long-term key relationships, some examples of how they completely transformed, people's lives. One example from my own journey and how, some key relationships with high net worth individuals completely changed the course of my life. Some really cool stuff on how to scale from, 0 to 100 million, what he sees with decamillionaires, centimillionaires, billionaires, differences, mindset tactics, all kinds of great things that there's going to be some little nuggets in here that you can apply on your journey. So hope you enjoy the show. All the links, all the websites that were mentioned, you can find at millionaireMindcast.com. Let's dive into today's episode with Richard Wilson. Welcome into the show, Mr. Richard Wilson. How we doing, man?
Good. How you doing, Matthew?
Doing great. Anytime I get to talk finance, family offices, raising money, I'm always excited. So glad to have you on the show today. And for those that don't know how you kind of broke into this space with Family Office Club and billionaires.com and a lot of the stuff that you do in this wealth building space, what led you into this from your own entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, so I had started 7 or 8 businesses before I got out of high school. I had a business in college that made pretty good money. And then when I got out of college, nobody wanted to pay me very much. So I had to work my way by working for free at a consulting firm, got in there, and then out of a no-name state school, at age, 21, I started making $100,000 a year doing consulting, but it was super boring. So I paid for my MBA. And then I looked around and nobody wants to pay a 23-year-old kid $100,000 a year, especially back in, 2003. And so looking around, I figured out I need to work in commercial real estate or raising capital because then it's eat what you kill. And it's like, I know I can perform, so I'm just going to go to that industry. Ended up getting a couple job offers in commercial real estate and turned them down to go into the capital raising side of things. And when raising capital, nobody was being helpful to me on family offices. And I thought, like, how come I can't find a trail guide? It's so backwards. These are the wealthiest people on planet Earth, and nobody's being helpful to me. There's no helpful books or YouTube channels or anything. So we've spent the last 18 years correcting that and bought FamilyOffices.com, bought Billionaires.com, hosted 300 events, put out 1,100 videos on YouTube, and we've got about 17 million social media group members now and 20 employees, and have just been down that rabbit hole of basically interviewing the ultra wealthy, hosting events to meet them, and yada yada.
I gotta imagine that when you are kind of the catalyst or the space creator and you attract those people into your world, right? There's a lot of doors, a lot of opportunities, a lot of learning that come with that. And that being a challenging space to, like you said, break into, right? And oftentimes it's a lot of closed door conversations going on that, a lot of the trade secrets, the insights of the wealthy weren't as easily accessible back then. And obviously your space and your platform, your community has been great at kind of pioneering that. Talk about some of the lessons that you have learned breaking into this family office space as somebody that's just looking to learn from what the wealthy are doing, whether it's billionaires, athletes, centa or decamillionaires. What comes to mind?
Yeah, a couple of things is just that not everybody has like a big network. Somebody might be worth $50 million or $100 million. They might not know more than a few other or 5 or 10 other people at their level. So sometimes you can play a connector between such groups, analyzing trends that are going on and identifying, what are some best practices is really appreciated. And I think that when someone's really busy and they're really high net worth, people are always pitching themselves. Like, here's a deal. Give me some of your time, do me a favor, open this door. And so having the mindset of adding value first is super critical, helping them grow their business, helping their son or daughter or spouse or something where you're adding value first, which is so critical. So that's like our whole business really is just to give away lots and lots of insights and strategies through like podcasts like what you're doing right now, through our YouTube channel, et cetera. And then people will say, okay, my time is de-risked now because I know this person has something to share, has expertise, et cetera. So it's just, what you're doing right now is a good example of how we built our whole business, really.
I was going to say, I mean, I know for a lot of people who are, trying to raise capital or trying to get around the people that are, bigger fish than them and, have more wisdom or experience or maybe a better network. One of the, I know, limiting beliefs for a lot of people is like, what value can I offer this person, right? Like they've got the balance sheet, they've got the business network, they've obviously
Sure.
got here, on purpose and not by accident. So what was your personal approach and strategy and how has that evolved over time in terms of how you consistently look to bring value to people maybe in the beginning when you were not as established, but also
Yeah.
now that you're constantly having to evolve and innovate and, kind of raise the bar a little bit and bringing value? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So at the beginning, it was, reading everything I could on how family offices or the ultra wealthy would structure real estate deals or conduct due diligence. And then I would say, oh, here are the top 5 white papers on family office or institutional quality due diligence best practices. Or here's a one pager or an infographic I created on centimillionaires globally. How many are they? Where are they based? Where do they make their money, et cetera? It was just aggregating other resources that people created. But once I had interviewed enough family offices, then I got a book deal with Wiley and a book deal with Bloomberg, and then, published some of our own books. And it's easier to put out your own genuine, authentic kind of frontline insights once you've done the interviews yourself. But at the beginning, it was really looking at everything that had been put out on a niche, organizing that information, saying this is the most valuable. But if you're in venture capital, also read this and look at this and look at this. And here's what I'm seeing across all these resources. And it's basically just organizing information for people and then creating our own unique information. And then by doing those two things, it builds a network and it builds connections and relationships. Now you have another, bread for fish thing to trade to give value to people first.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the spectrum that we went up. And then eventually you get in this position where people have either heard your name or read your book or like it kind of softens the ground to get meetings with people.
Yeah, that's awesome. And for those that don't understand a family office, right? What is a family office? What comprises a family office? When does a family office form? What do they do? What do they look for? How do you describe that to somebody that, may just be raising capital from high net worth individuals or, doing deals, kind of on their own, trying to syndicate and things like that, but maybe want to look at some larger check writers that may have some synergy or alignment with their model or their investment vehicles that they are going after, and it could be a great fit for them.
Right, right. Yeah, the term's used in many different ways. So it's a ultra wealthy solution for managing their wealth. And you have different needs if you're worth 5, 10, 20, 100 million plus than if you're worth half a million or 1 million, right? So basically there's 3 main types of family offices. There's a virtual family office where basically you have the benefits of a holistic family office, or you try to, but keep it as virtual as possible. Maybe have 1 or 2 full-time employees, maybe none. And the next level is a single family office, which would be kind of like a fully formalized team. Nowadays, a lot of them are still working virtually, but they are full time dedicated to you. And sometimes those can be tucked inside of operating businesses. Other times it's a standalone single family office entity. And then the third type is a multifamily office, which is like wealth advisors serving 10 or 20 or 500 clients that are all ultra wealthy. So it's important to know the differences between a virtual, a single, and a multifamily office when you're reaching out to them and what that dynamic is like. And essentially, the space got created because if you're worth tens of millions of dollars and you miss a tax deadline or forget to file something, the penalty of that could be $100,000. And that would have paid for a full time person just to do nonsense regulatory paperwork that you don't want to have to do, to open up mail, to reply back to AT&T and pay the bill because a credit card expired and manage your calendar. And then, so the wealthier you get, the more likely it is that you are going to miss some details if you don't have somebody overlooking and connecting everything because you've got way more going on and the cost of each mistake is way higher. So eventually it just turns into this like, well, we need to do things holistically. It's not like just simple stuff anymore. So that's the core of it.
How do you find these family offices? And when you do find them, what's the best way to approach them and present deals? Like you said, right? Once you get to a
Right.
certain level and people know, hey, this is the person who's got some capital, the deal flow and the pipeline, starts to become pretty plentiful. So how do you stand out? How do you
Right.
do it in a professional and a respectable manner? And how do you find these individuals or these groups?
Yeah. So lots of answers to that. One is we have basically 16 in-person events a year at Family Office Club. You can meet them at our events. That's the whole point of Family Office Club. But let's pretend that we didn't exist. How would I go about finding them? One, I would look locally on LinkedIn and search for people with 20 or more employees or 10, 15 plus employees that are in your city. I would look for nonprofit and business owner groups and clubs that might cost 7, 10, $25,000 a year or more to join, and try to network with groups in there. I would also look at, what are you raising capital for? Is it stem cell centers or dry cleaners or manufacturing businesses? Then you should look nationally, not just locally, and figure out, is there a national dry cleaner association thing out there that costs 20,000 a year to join? Like, maybe private equity groups, but also owners who have 5 or 10 locations or much, much more might be a part of that. And now you don't need to teach them the dry cleaning business or the stem cell business. They've done very well in it. And if your deal has merit, they might recognize that merit on the surface level. So you always raise capital the fastest by going to people who are local to you, people that already know you if possible, or people that already know your industry. That leads to like quick movement up a trust curve. And if you are pitching people, family offices that don't know you, don't know your industry, and they're not local to you, then you better make like fast friends with them at a live event and have great follow up, because it's really low chance you're going to convert those people. And I want to make a comment about like AI and the importance of meeting in person in a minute or two, but like that's the answer basically of like some areas you could look in as kind of like, who's in your industry that's made a lot of money, who's local to you as a family office, who do you already know, obviously that's ultra wealthy, et cetera.
And I know you probably kind of touched on a few of those, but I know you talk about, 7 different strategies for raising capital efficiently. And, over the last we'll call it, post-COVID 2020 to 2022, it seemed like, money was falling out of the sky, literally. And then, the last few years it's gotten pretty tight, right? People are really
Yeah.
looking at deals through a much more conservative lens, keeping capital on the sidelines for the war chest and some dry powder. So obviously, there's always a bull market somewhere. There's always opportunity somewhere, and
Right.
you want to be able to find those individuals. But let's just say in any market, good or bad, there's probably effective and efficient strategies and disciplines for raising capital that you've seen and witnessed from your own experience and many others in your community. What are some of those?
Yeah. Yeah. One is to have a really powerful position. I think what I see almost everybody mess up as that they don't realize there's 10,000 competitors out there, just like there's 70,000 AI startups out there. And so they name their company in a confusing way. They'll call it Wilson Capital or some Greek god capital, and nobody has any idea what you do. They'll have no one liner that basically says why somebody should care that your investment opportunity exists on planet Earth, or why they should look at your investment. That should just be one sentence long. They have no 1 to 3 minute video from their founder. They send over a 40 or 70 page pitch deck that nobody's going to read the whole thing. Um, and they just have very, very weak, poor positioning. And if you're in a crowded space like multifamily syndication or AI, and you don't get them in the first half sentence or sentence, you're just dead in the water and they're moving on unless it was like a referral from someone. And then sometimes who referred the deal matters more than the merits of the deal, because they trust a lot because it came from their brother or their partner. Um, so that would be something I would really get down, because it costs nothing to have really powerful positioning and do the homework to see what your competition's saying, what are investors looking for. A couple other strategies would be to conduct thought leadership. Choose a sandbox. It's so valuable that if you ever just dominated that sandbox, doesn't matter how long it takes to dominate it, that amazing things would happen for you. That's what we're trying to do with billionaires.com. That's what we're trying to do with Family Office Club, et cetera. And if you have that mindset, you will do things like producing certain types of thought leadership that take a whole lot of work and add tons of value to a prospect, maybe a year or two before they're even ready to work with you. So doing that type of thought leadership, people don't want to do, and that's why almost nobody does it. And so that's something that most people will write off and say, "Oh, I'm not like a thought leader. I'm not like I can't do a podcast like Matthew, or I can't, do a white paper, et cetera." And so that's really critical. We've attracted so many centimillionaire, billionaire, and decamillionaire investors that just reach out to us, quote unquote, cold, because they have digested our YouTube videos or read a book we wrote or something like that. So we're evidence that it does for sure work. You just have to focus and again, not be commoditized. Like do the thought leadership, but take everything I said on powerful positioning and apply it to your thought leadership. Um, Einstein, when he won the Nobel Prize, people said, "Oh, aren't you like proud that you like discovered relativity?" He said, "I didn't discover it. I just solved it because I thought about nothing else for a decade." And most people don't want to focus for more than a year or two, right? It's like, oh, crypto, oh, NFTs, oh, AI, and it's like, people don't want to focus long term on one thing usually.
Such a great point. I have kind of a cool story on that front. So, a couple to that point, I think, I looking back, there's been so many, I've got an accredited investor list. I was on a lot of my podcasts. I would say, if you're interested in passive income opportunities as a limited partner and you want to get exposure to my deals, text the word deals to 844. Well, I've got about 1,000 accredited investors on that list now. And I started at zero, right? But doing the
Nice.
podcast, I'm going on 10 years now of doing this podcast. I've been able to grow a good list. A handful of people have, over the years, a couple dozen people have invested in deals. I've, raised tens of millions of dollars off of my podcast deals list. And, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten on calls with people and, I'm walking through a deal and like, I'm good. I don't, I know who you are. I've been listening to you for a long time. I trust you, right? So to that point,
Right.
it's an important thing just to, stay in that. If it's something that you truly plan on doing for the long period, I always talk about the crock pot versus the microwave. This is that crock pot mentality of just like pick your niche,
Yeah.
find that thought leadership, and just lean into it and trust in the process that if you do it consistently and diligently and in alignment with your skill set, your experiences, and integrity and all those kind of
Right.
things, it's going to pay off for you. And a kind of another cool story about that. Um, I play in the hotel space, and I'm closing on my fourth hotel here in a couple months. One of the
Right.
hotels that I ended up getting in contract on a couple years ago, the deal fell out. Um, and I reached out to the bank on it and said, "Hey, I know that the debt's coming due on this thing. Um, if you guys end up taking it back, I just would love to stay in touch with you." Didn't hear from them for about 18 months, and
Right.
then I get an email.
Yeah.
Hey, we are doing a deed in lieu of foreclosure from the owner on this asset. We're taking it back. We're not hotel operators. Anyways, long story short, the bank, I convinced the bank to partner with me on the deal and leave a couple $1 million in equity in on the deal, do an all equity deal with me. And the one thing, there was all kind, they put me through an FBI background check, all kinds of crazy stuff. The one thing that solidified that deal for me, they said they went back through 8 years of my social media, and that got them much more comfortable with who they were partnering with, right? So, like, to your point, it's one of those things where, yeah, it takes some time, but again, in a space like this, one of those relationships or one of those capital partners, that could completely change not only your life, but your family's life going into future generations.
And nobody seems to realize that. It's so interesting to me that like some people will come to a community and maybe they're under some pressure to raise 1 million or 5 million or 10 million, whatever.
Yep.
And they'll look at one event. And like sometimes your first event, you'll meet a publicly traded company or a centimillionaire or an RIA that could invest 5 or 10 million. Sometimes you might have to follow up for 18 months. Sometimes it might be your sixth event you come to. But one relationship could change your entire life. And nobody else, I feel like, says that except for you just now. And so we definitely think very much alike. And that's like the exciting thing about running a platform like yours or mine is that you're putting value out there, creating these business friends, creating reciprocation. And like Cialdini says, reciprocation is one of the top 6 influence and persuasion strategies out there. And when you're putting out thought leadership on a platform, it's like mass reciprocation
Yeah.
and authority at the same time. And if you can become the number one authority on a niche to such a degree that nobody else knows of an authority who knows more than you do, then you become a scarce authority. And there's a scarcity factor to it as well, I feel like. And so that's kind of our goal. We do like a 360-degree kind of blitz on a niche when we want to do really well in that niche long term. And we look at, what are we going to do the next 10, 20 years to dominate that niche in every single way possible. And we get excited by such ideas. We know almost nobody is going to want to do that and then actually go through and do it, even if they want to sign up for it.
Yeah, and this is one of those spaces, to your point, right? Is you just have to think and play the long game, because the wealthy people, they're not making decisions on a 30-second conversation, right? They really want to get to know you. They want to build that rapport, that authority, that credibility. But once that door is unlocked, then right, you're in, and that's a great thing. And I know you've dealt and met and done business with so many different facets of that particular avatar of individual.
Right.
What are some of the things that you've seen or that you yourself, like or don't like when it comes to people trying to raise capital or to build relationships? And what do you think is just, when you're dealing with these types of groups and high level individuals and thinkers, what are the do's and don'ts for like building quality long-term relationships?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think being politely persistent. If somebody says no or doesn't respond, it doesn't mean they're not interested. It might just mean that they're closing another deal right now and they're good at extreme focus and they're waiting to get this deal to closing, and then they'll open up their mind to new opportunities. It could be that they're planning to allocate to a different self storage manager and then they don't pass due diligence. So now, 2 months later, they are interested in someone. And so if you get offended or take it personally or be emotional about it, you have to be kind of like the more of a class act you are at every turn, the more people will want to work with you in this space. And you have to be quasi institutional quality and professional and keep following up. For billionaires.com, it took us 170 emails over 12 years to buy that asset. And if it wasn't for that consistent follow up, it wouldn't have happened. So you have to know that some people will say no to you on purpose just to see how you react.
So true.
And lots of people just get bombarded. So we have 17 million social media group members, and I get constant messages asking for people to jump and get on a phone call without even saying what the phone call is about. And that seems like so obvious to people like you and I who are very busy, but it's like, well, who are you? What do you want to talk about? Like, maybe we can handle this over LinkedIn or something. And so the reality is that I get 808 emails on average every day, is what my email meter software tells me. But I only get 4 to 8 voicemails a day. And I don't know how many emails the average investor gets who's decently well connected, but my ratio is 8 to 1. And, it's like 100 to 1. And basically, like, I don't read every email, but I listen to the first part of every voicemail. And if it's some bot or just weird, strange voicemail, I hit delete.
Yeah.
But you've got like 6 to 10 words to get my attention. And the average investor may or may not have as many incoming messages as me, but a big investor will have at least as many. And so you literally have like 6 to 10 words to grab them and say something really valuable. And if it starts to sound like everything else, or like, hey, I want to sell you something, or like, hey, can I have a bunch of your time to pick your brain, then like it's gone, right? You're done, right? So it'd be like super on point, value add, unique, have a sense of humor if you naturally have one, like be concise, be professional, follow up, be consistent, position yourself uniquely. If you don't do all those things right, you're not even on the playing field. You're never going to score a goal.
Such a good point. Now, thinking about how deals are presented, how deals are structured, right? Sometimes people are just dead in the water right out of the gate because of how they structure and engineer a deal.
Right.
And,
Right.
I've always been a big believer, especially when you're first getting started, you're trying to kind of break into a space, or you're trying to maybe establish a new relationship. I would say it's better own a slice of a watermelon than, 100% of a raisin or nothing. And a lot of people get a little
Right.
bit greedy, or they misstructure a deal, and they just totally shoot themselves
Yeah.
in the foot before they actually give themselves a chance. And they maybe had a good
Right.
deal, misstructured it. So what are some of the, the mistakes that you see people making when it comes to deal structuring and how they can make sure they're putting their best foot forward when they're putting, these opportunities in front of people when they've got a short opportunity, window to make that work?
Yeah, so many comments on that. One is some people don't think the structure matters that much. They just think, oh, just get me in front of the right investor and I'll get them closed. That's the wrong mindset. The second is that if you have an average deal with an amazing structure, then it can be a great deal. And if you have an amazing deal with a really bad structure, I can make it so I have all the collateral, I get all the cash flow first, I get 10x my money, and then you only get your money back maybe if some miracle happens, right? Like, so you can structure it to make it amazingly better or worse. And new investors don't realize that. New capital raisers don't realize that. Almost every capital raiser I meet says, oh, yeah, I've got all the deal flow that you need. It's only the money that's the problem. It's like, yeah, anyone that can go to LoopNet, it's the same thing. Okay, here's a million deals, right? Like, doesn't it means absolutely nothing. Also, amateur hour is people going to events and telling people, this is the most amazing deal you've ever seen. It's the best return. It's like you can write any IRR on the paper. It means absolutely nothing without the context of trust.
Yeah.
It's the relationship, it's who you are, it's how you add the value. That's what's going to get them to invest way more than the merits of the deal. But you should have it sweating for you. So just like having a powerful position, if you are only buying stem cell centers in Austin, Texas, and the name of your firm is Austin Stem Cell Capital, okay, we have some idea what you do and where you do it. That sweats for you a little bit because now when you follow up after a conference, it'd be like, oh, that's Matthew, the stem cell guy from Austin, if that was what you did, right? And versus like, oh, Wilson Capital, like what that guy do again, right? So the name's sweating for you. Well, the structure should sweat for you too. Most people go to an attorney and say, how should I structure this? And the attorney's like, well, I got some templates here. I mean, why don't we do the best practice and do what everyone else does? And out to the investor, it looks average or bad because it looks average when it should be dialed in and be refreshing. So the investor says, oh, that sounds more than fair. Oh, that's really refreshing. No, I've never seen someone structure a deal like that, but it's way more favorable for me as an investor. I definitely sleep better at night knowing I got all my money off the table first before you profited greatly together, et cetera. And so the structure should be excellent and not the same as what everyone else does. And the dumb question that people ask when they go out to raise capital is this how everyone else does it? It's like, well, if you do what everyone else does, you're never going to be great, right? Like it's just by definition, right? So structure is something that so many people ignore.
Yeah. Now, scaling is always, something that I know a lot of people kind of hit that ceiling, right? And they struggle to really break through. They struggle to get that scale. They kind of, take it as far as they can, but then there's something that really prevents them. But I know you've been around a lot of
Right.
people that have scaled to the 50, to the 100 million, to the 250 million, to the, billionaire mark. What are some of the common
Right.
threads that you've kind of, I know you're a student of the game, you're always studying. What are some of the common threads, themes, mindsets, strategies that you see really kind of allow people that are, they've got the potential, but maybe they
Right.
don't get that breakthrough? What are the ones that do break through? What are they doing a little bit differently?
A lot of them are they're decisive. They move swiftly. They practice like speed and implementation. Typically, very curious, learning a whole bunch about their industry all the time. Um, a lot of them are okay experimenting with new ideas, even if some people tell them that's not how it's done, or that's not usual, or that's not realistic. That's where a real breakthrough might come through. Like Elon catching the rocket. One of his many leaders of the team said, "Oh, it's not possible, we can't do that. It's a bad idea." And one person said, well, it's possible maybe if we did this or that. And he put that person in charge to go down that route and see if they could get it figured out. So they're okay with having some failures because they know that through experimentation and learning and quick adaptation, that's how they'll get smarter over time. A lot of them are voracious learners in terms of readers, audiobooks, anything they can learn on their industry. Like Mark Cuban is famous for saying it's not the capital that sets you apart. It's really your ability to focus and then gain all the specialized knowledge in that niche possible to really figure out what's the right strategy moving forward. Those are some of the things I see. I mean, some of my clients, they just think really big and they're willing to take some risks. And if along the way something doesn't work out, they're not overly upset about it, right? Like, and I'm not like I like to get into political things at all, but like take an example of someone saying like, oh, you can't trust this politician because he ran this one business and it went bankrupt and they laid off like 800 people. It's like, well, they might have had 40 businesses and employed 40,000 people, and they have to be willing to risk it to get the biscuit on some level. Most of them don't risk their whole net worth and collateralize everything and risk burning down to the ground. But they do like take some risk. Like, all right, let's make this work. And like to other people, it might be like, whoa, that was like a bold move or a big move, right? But stepping into like an unknown future takes courage. And if you don't think big and have courage, it's not going to happen. And then the last thing I'd say is that a lot of I see secure distribution choke points, like strategic assets that once you have that choke point, your business grows faster. And that's a concept from Fern Harnish's book, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. So we've used that strategy over and over again in our business. And that's really how we've grown over time.
That's awesome. What do you think separates billionaires and the millionaires? Is it just the business arena that they're playing in and they're being, exponential versus compounding? Like what do you think from that perspective separates some of the people that you've seen?
Yeah. I think radically different mindsets. I think there's many ways to become a millionaire by being pretty conservative and not taking big risks and playing it more safe. You can do so through a career with a large corporation, for example. I think the people that grow to tens of millions of dollars almost always is from starting their own business. You could be getting some early shares in a Silicon Valley company or company that goes public or make a partner at a huge law firm or Goldman Sachs, I guess. But that's not the people I talk to. The people I talk to are business owners, founders, entrepreneurs. Um, a lot of them leverage some level of debt. Most of them don't lever up as much as some sponsors and syndicators do. But I think that's one differentiator. And I once had a chance to talk to two of my friends. They have 39 clients with an average net worth of $140 million. And we went out for sushi one night and it was like super loud in there. And one of them got up to go to the restroom and I talked to the other partner, and then everyone came back and didn't know I had talked to the other one. And I asked him the same question. I said, what makes the difference of your clients that are worth on average 130, 140 million, and they serve some billionaires, and then just like normal wealthy people that are worth 1 to 5, 1 to 10 million? Like, what is the commonality across all your clients and the hundreds you talked to that didn't become a client? And they both said the exact same thing, which is really interesting. Um, they both said that the people who get stuck below the 10 million, they get to a certain level and they made it. And it's like, okay, the kids are going to college and I can retire, move out to Hawaii and sit on a beach if I want to and not do a dang thing. If I get disabled, my family will be fine. And then they take the foot a little bit off the gas. They have some more success. It doesn't take as much effort because they have momentum. They have a little bit more success. And then they hover in there at 5, 10, 15 million. They said that the clients who are worth hundreds of millions, tens and tens of millions, they're not like that. They're driven and hardworking, the fun of the game, proving something, maybe a chip on the shoulder, maybe they always thought they could do so much more than what they've accomplished so far. So this hunger to get that done. And it came up at our AI investor mastermind we hosted last week. And someone said, oh, well, AI, I think we'll all be working less. And it's like, okay, well, when emails came out, we didn't have to meet in person or have a phone call or send a fax. Did we all start working less? I mean, hardworking entrepreneurs are like, oh, great, I just saved like 8 hours a week. All right, I can extend my business into Asia now. Or like, oh, now I can start this other business I've been putting off for a decade. And I always wanted to dig tunnels underground to, help traffic or something, right? So like, that's my thinking on that, is like the type A super hard driven entrepreneur, like that's just how their mind works. They're just go, 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 like a lot of the time. Not to mean they're unhealthy, but like they're ambitious, right? So I think that's like a big differentiator.
Yeah, it is one of those things, because oftentimes I've been in tons of different masterminds and, that's always been a question. I'm like, when is
Yeah.
enough for you? Like, what's your number, right? And it's always interesting
Yeah.
that very little do I get the response of like, it's a certain number. It's like, oh, I don't know. Like, I love what I do and I'm constantly wanting to be challenged. And, right. It's like this, it's a blessing and a curse, right? It's like we summit Mount Everest. So,
Right.
well, what's that mountain over there? Let's go see what that's all about. Right. Um, But I think
Yeah.
that's also the beauty and also the DNA makeup of what makes those individuals who they are and achieve what they do.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. It's more of like the game of it. And then once you climb your local, Mount Hood or Mount Bachelor or whatever the local mountain is near you, and you realize, oh, I'm more capable than I thought I was. And now that I'm sitting up here, let me enjoy the view a little bit and look around. But like that was pretty fun. I think I'm pretty capable with the right crew. Then maybe we can do K2, and that looks like fun, and so it's kind of like you learn your capabilities and reach a certain plateau, and then some people decide to keep on climbing, and others are like, "Oh, I got my merit badge, and I was just in it just purely to get enough to retire and just play golf my whole life." And I guess that separates a lot of people. There's no right or wrong answer. I mean, for me, um, that's why I moved out to Hawaii. Is like, what's the point of having tons of money just to shower it on my kids so they're not motivated to work at all when I die?
Mhm.
And what's the point of the money? And so I told my kids, like, we don't live like in a massive mansion, but real estate in Hawaii is expensive. So I told them, like, look, I could have bought 10 Lamborghinis, or I can buy this house. But I chose healthy adventure life with you girls and having a fun life where we could be outside every single day of the year. To me, that's way more important than some flashy Lamborghini you might see Mr. Beast give away with his Beast games or something, right? And so, like, to me, being ultra healthy helps me become more wealthy, and it's not one or the other. And so, being around so many wealthy people, it's really driven that in deep in my head that like some of these people have nothing if they're about to die and they're worth 100 million and they're super obese, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they would give it all back to get that health, right? I couldn't agree more. It is
Yeah.
interesting to, as I've interviewed so many people, and I know you've interviewed and been around so many people, everybody has a different definition of what wealth means to them. But I know for the one that resonates most with me, it's very similar to what you just said, right? It goes far beyond a balance sheet or a bank account, and what dollars can
Right.
buy. It's memories, it's experiences. I know you're a girl dad of three. I'm a girl dad
Right.
of three, and those
Yeah.
those things are priceless to me. And
Yeah.
I one of the quotes that I always love, that, one of my friends always says is, "You're either a family man with a business or a businessman with a family." And there's a difference. And, and some of the wealthiest people I know, on paper and in life, are the ones who are family men or women first, and,
Yeah.
they're businessmen or women second, and that resonates with me a
Yeah.
lot. That's for me what I want my
Yeah.
definition of wealth to look more of like, instead of it just being a, numbers driven game.
Yeah, if you only care about becoming super wealthy, then basically what you're telling your kids and everyone around you is like, it's okay to literally die early, be unhealthy, have a drinking problem, and get divorced 3 times, all for the sake of money, because we
Yeah.
worship money in this house, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And it's like that doesn't make any sense at all, right? And so that's something that is, I got to learn at an early age by being around so many wealthy people. And it's kind of like, when you die one day, no one's really going to care how much money you had. Maybe a few people that'll inherit it will and ask questions, but like most people are not going to sit around and be like, man, that's great. That guy sure know how to make a buck. He was sure good at making money. It's like on some level, they don't care. And in today's society, you get some criticism or, some jealousy or envy, when sometimes people perceive you as being successful, like, oh, is he lucky? Did he deserve that? Was he ethical? So you have to live your life in a way that's going to make you happy and healthy above all else. That's what's most important. At the end of the day, no one cares how successful you are except for your immediately 3 best friends and family or something, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so
I
so that's my view on it.
I totally agree with that. I forget, it was like some thread on X, but it was somebody that was kind of making the argument around, how many people focus on, building wealth and generational wealth, and this guy kind of was like trying to tear it apart in a way that was like, yeah, do that, but just don't sacrifice your values in the process, and remember what's really important, because your great grandkids or your great grandkids kids, they're not gonna know who the hell you are. They're not gonna have any kind of
Right.
true emotional tie or attachment to who you are and what you sacrificed, and, so that was an
Right.
interesting kind of, dynamic to throw in there, because I think a lot of people are like, "I'm out there building wealth for the next 7 generations," and oftentimes, historically and statistically, it's lost by the 2nd or 3rd generation. If you do a good job, obviously it carries on, right? But, I think
Yeah.
building wealth along the way and keeping alignment with your values, and those are the things that I think are generationally impactful. As we wrap up here,
Right.
I know you just did this AI seminar and conference, and obviously the last year was the year of AI. It seems to only be compounding and changing
Right.
so many different spaces, from business to finance to raising capital. What were some of the topics that you guys dove into? What were some of the interesting things that were coming up in discussion there?
Yeah, I think there's two or three that are pretty interesting. One is that Dr. Robert Cialdini is the kind of the godfather of influence and persuasion, and he said that it's scientifically proven when you're trying to make any sale, when you meet in person, it's 16 times as effective. And that was for any type of sale. So imagine if you're going to get married to someone, buy a house, or invest $500,000 with somebody. It's probably even more important to meet in person before you get married or put $1 million with somebody. So I think it's in the modern day for the investment world when you're raising capital, it shows it's way more than 16 times as effective to be in person with an investor versus a Zoom or a phone call, right? That's one thing. But then also in the world now of AI and deep fake anything, you can't believe anything you see on the screen. This whole podcast interview could have been made by HeyGen and be like a fake interview. And maybe I never said these words, etc. But if you meet someone in person and you walk their manufacturing plant and shake the hands of the employees and use the bath salts that they produce, now it's real and tangible and you're way more likely to invest. And so that came up. Is like the more that there's AI, the more that meeting in person and the analog becomes like more important because you can't trust what you see digitally. So that was one big takeaway. The saving of time and what entrepreneurs will do with that was a takeaway. And then how to build your own custom AI tools was one takeaway. So two examples of that are we built this tool for investors that we give our members and our investors for free, and it's called Dewey, and it's a due diligence advisor. So what you can do, we've fed 150 white papers, due diligence checklists, and our full day workshop on investment due diligence into this AI tool. And you can upload a PPM, an offering document, a pitch deck to it, and in 30 seconds, it'll tell you red flags, things to look out for, is evaluation off, etc. Doesn't replace using a real attorney or accountant, but let's say that you read every word of a PPM and it's 140 pages long. And even if you actually took the time to read every single word and then bounce it off this tool, it might point out 5 or 10 things that maybe you didn't clue in on. Or like, let's say when you get a pitch deck for a stem cell center or venture capital fund, whatever it is, you always start out with like 3 to 5 questions high level before you even read the pitch deck, like to see how good they might be. Well, you can bounce it off the tool and in 30 seconds give another 5 or 10 really pointed questions that are specific about their materials. Because all of us are busy as investors. So like that's one tool. It's just an example. We need that for looking at lots and lots of deals. It just speeds things up. And we know that our investors would benefit from us building it. So that's an example. And anyone can look at their own business and say, what do I do repetitively? What do my clients need? How do I add value to them and create an AI tool that could really help them? The second one is an example of, like earlier, we talked about strategic choke points. So we want billionaires.com to be the number one in the world for mental model scaling strategies for billionaires. So there's 247 books written by billionaires, not on them. I've read 120 of them so far. I'm trying to get through them all. I've got the top 10 listed on our website. We're interviewing 100 billionaires. I'm 45 of the way through that. But then also there's 60 infographics out there on billionaires. And more importantly, there's 986 YouTube videos on billionaires. So we took all those YouTube videos, transcribed all 986, fed them all into an AI tool. And now our members can ask questions against the collective wisdom of what billionaires have said publicly on YouTube and be like, hey, here's my plan to scale my business. What would you point out? Or like, hey, what are the common mistakes that billionaires tell entrepreneurs to keep in mind? Or like, here's my plan for the whole year. What else should I be considering, et cetera. and have kind of a billionaire advisory board via AI. So like those are just like cool tools that I have fun playing around with because I feel like it just gives me a slight edge to make decisions faster, and it's part of like having a 360-degree blitz on a niche to do like everything you could possibly imagine to be number one in the sandbox, and then have your team help you execute on that over like a decade.
Brilliant. Well, I know a lot of people are going to want to check out Family Office Club, billionaires.com. I know you guys got tons of amazing content and value to offer. Where's the best place for them to do that?
Just go to familyoffices.com and then you can check out our event schedule, membership options, etc. But if anybody needs some quick feedback or ask questions, you can also shoot me a text message, just 305-333-1155. And we find that helps things not get lost in email inboxes, etc.
Richard, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, appreciate you having me here.
Well, that wraps up today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, you guys know this show would not be what it is without you, the amazing listener, the support, sharing this out with other people who can gain value from it, taking 60 seconds to leave a review. If you haven't done so already, those things mean the world to us and ultimately help us spread this message out to as many people as we possibly can to help them on their wealth building journey. If you have any particular links or resources that you're trying to track down that were mentioned in this interview, be sure to check out this episode at millionairemindcast.com, where you can find access to all that information. And of course, if you haven't checked out the Wise Investor Vault yet, be sure to head over to wiseinvestorvault.com to check out all the tools, all the resources, the checklists, the spreadsheets, the trackers, all kinds of amazing things that can help you on your wealth building journey at the wiseinvestorvault.com. If you haven't connected with me on social media yet, I'm consistently putting out more content, stories, value to help you on your wealth building journey. And one of the best and most exciting things for me on a weekly basis is getting to connect with you guys. Getting your DMs, hearing what things impacted you, what you need help with is a big way that we continue to drive the content for this show. So if we're not connected and following each other on Instagram, on social media at Official Matty A, give me a like and a follow. Would love to connect with you there. And of course, don't forget to get on my deals list. If you're an accredited investor, you want to look at more deal flow. You want to see what deals I have access to, what deals I'm raising capital for. This is an exclusive list that I only put out to my accredited investor list, my Millionaire Mindcast family. So text the word deals to 844-447-1555. And with that being said, thank you again so much for supporting the show. Until next week's episode, keep investing in yourself and your wealth on your march to $1 million and beyond. Cheers.